You're watching Noir Street. I'm your host, Nero Wolfe. Every story hides a secret, and every shadow hides a clue. Tell us where in the world you're watching from. Subscribe, tap the like button, and join us as we drift into mystery. Chapter 1. The clean corpse, they found the body like a showroom mannequin. No dirt under nails, no scuffs on shoes, no panic in the room. Only one thing argued with the perfection. One shirt button was wrong, sewn on with a different thread color. Nero Wolfe stood over it like a man reading a street sign nobody else could see. A clean death, in a dirty city, always meant somebody had time. And time, around here, was the loudest witness. If you've lived in New York long enough, you learn two truths. 1. People will step over a man bleeding on the sidewalk if the light is green. 2. A corpse that looks freshly pressed is never an accident. It's an announcement. I got the announcement at 10:30 on a Wednesday, which in our house is the part of the morning when Wolfe is in the plant rooms with Theodore Horstman and the orchids, and I'm downstairs at my desk pretending to be patient with the world. Fritz had just slid a plate of eggs in front of me with the solemnity of a judge issuing a sentence when the doorbell rang. Since Fritz was in the kitchen and Wolfe was worshipping flowers, the bell belonged to me. That's the arrangement. Wolfe pays the taxes with his brain. I pay the penalties with my legs. I opened the front door and found Inspector Kramer on the stoop, broad as a sideboard and about as delicate. With him was a stranger in a dark overcoat that looked new enough to squeak and a fedora that had never been bent by a subway strap. The stranger's face was the kind you forget as you're looking at it. Except for his eyes, which were intent and cold, like a man watching a game he's already decided to win. Kramer didn't bother with hello. Goodwin, Wolfe home. I tilted my head. He lives here, as a rule. We need him, Kramer growled. Now. Then you're early, I said. He's with his orchids. Kramer's lips moved as if he was counting to 10 to keep from using words that would offend the orchids. He nodded at the stranger. This is Lieutenant Rowe, homicide. We got something odd. I looked Rowe over again. He didn't like it. That was fine. Most cops didn't. What's odd? I asked. Kramer's eyes flicked past me into the hallway, like he expected to see Wolfe standing there with a napkin tucked in his collar and an opinion already loaded. A dead man, he said, and it looks like he died in a barber shop window. That did it. I stepped back and waved them in because curiosity is a disease, and I'm a chronic case. I took them to the office, gave them chairs, and then went to do what I always do when the police intrude on Wolfe's schedule. I went upstairs to interrupt genius. In the plant rooms the air was warm and wet and smelled like green life and money. Theodore Horstman was bending over a bench with a watering can, as reverent as a priest at an altar. Wolfe was in his chair, enormous and still, his eyes fixed on a pale yellow bloom, as if it might confess to something. He didn't turn when I spoke. Inspector Kramer is downstairs with a lieutenant. They say they have a dead man that looks like a window display. That got me a slow head turn and a look that could have stripped paint. Wolfe disliked the police in his house the way a cat dislikes water in its fur. They are incapable of restraint, he said. Tell Inspector Kramer I am occupied. Already did, I said. He stayed anyway. Wolfe's nostrils widened slightly, his version of a tantrum. Then he said to Horstman, the humidity must not drop. Do not permit it. Horstman murmured something that might have been agreement or prayer. Wolfe rose, a difficult, deliberate operation like a safe being moved without wheels, and followed me downstairs. In the office, Kramer stood up. Rowe stayed sitting, but his eyes tracked Wolfe like a rifle sight. Wolfe stopped by his desk, did not offer his hand, and said, Inspector, Lieutenant, why are you here? Kramer's answer was blunt. Because you're a pain in the neck and because we need you. There's a body in a Midtown office that don't make sense. Wolfe lowered himself into his chair and arranged his bulk. Bodies in offices seldom make sense. That is why there are
The watch is
policemen.
tied to a person.
Rose
And
spoke
if
for
you
the
have
first
felt
time,
that
and his
share
voice
the
was
story,
clipped and practiced.
hope you like
The
it.
victim is
Come back
male,
next and I
approximately
will talk part 2.
45, no identification on him, no wallet, no papers. Clothing is expensive and clean. He was found on the floor of a private reception room in an office suite on West 42nd Street. The room shows no signs of struggle. The victim's hands are clean, nails trimmed, his shoes are polished, his hair is combed. There's a small bruise at the base of the skull, and Wolfe held up a hand. Enough. Why is this a matter for me? Rose's eyes shifted to me briefly, then back to Wolfe, because of a button. I felt my eyebrows go up before I could stop them. Wolfe didn't move. Rowe reached into his coat pocket and produced a small paper envelope. He opened it and held out something pinched between tweezers. It was a shirt button, white, ordinary, except for the thread. The thread was a color that didn't belong on any respectable man's shirt. A dark, hard green, Rowe said. It was loose, not torn off, loose, like it had been sewn on in a hurry. The thread color is wrong. The rest of the shirt is stitched with white. Wolfe's eyes narrowed a fraction. And this is exceptional. It's exceptional because, Rowe said, the shirt is a custom shirt. The collar label is a maker on Madison. They use matching thread. Always, I checked. Kramer leaned forward. And because everything else about him is too clean. A guy gets hit in the head and dies. He sweats, he bleeds, he slobbers, he fights, he stumbles. This one looked like he'd been arranged. Wolfe's gaze went to the envelope, then to Rowe. You believe the button is a clue? I believe, Rowe said, that somebody wanted us to see it. That was the first thing he'd said that was interesting. I watched Wolfe's face. When Wolfe is intrigued, he looks like a man smelling something faint and deciding whether it's food or poison. He said, Where is this office? Rowe gave an address. I recognized it. It was the kind of building that housed lawyers, agents, and companies that sold nothing you could carry home. Wolfe asked for the name on the door. Rowe said it was a firm called Halstead and Klein, described as consulting and executive placement. Wolfe's eyes drifted to the corner of the room where the globe stood. He hated going out. The globe was where he paid penance to geography. Kramer saw the drift and pounced. Wolfe, we need you to come look right now. I can't haul the whole place in here. Wolfe's lips tightened. I will not be bullied. You're not being bullied, Kramer snapped. You're being asked, like a citizen, and if you don't like it, I'll... Wolfe cut him off with a soft, dangerous voice. You will do nothing, Inspector, except perhaps learn manners. I cleared my throat. We can compromise. Boys, if Wolfe won't go, I'll go. I can look at your mannequin and bring back the scenery. Wolfe turned his eyes on me. Archie. I know, I said. You dislike my legs being used without your permission, but this is a corpse with a wardrobe issue. That's practically an invitation. Rowe stood up then, as if he decided I was the only movable part in the room. We can take Goodwin. I can show him the scene. If Mr. Wolfe has questions, he can call. Wolfe's mouth twitched. If he'd been smaller, it would have been a smile. Very well, he said. Archie will go. I will remain here, where the air is tolerable. Inspector, I expect your cooperation and your silence. Kramer made a sound like a truck trying to start in winter. Fine, he said. But if your boy messes with evidence, I do not, Wolfe said. Employ a boy. 10 minutes later, I was in the back seat of a police car with Rowe, heading uptown through traffic that had no respect for murder. I've ridden with cops before. Wolfe has a reputation. True, I said. So do bedbugs. I don't enjoy this, he said flatly. I don't enjoy walking into an office where a man is dead and looks like somebody cleaned him with a cloth. I don't enjoy knowing the person who did it had time. There's that word again, I said. Rowe's jaw tightened. The receptionist found him at 8:15. She says the reception room door was closed. She thought it was a client waiting. She opened it and screamed. When we arrived, nothing was disturbed. No forced entry, no struggle, no obvious weapon. The man's watch was still on his wrist, Expensive. His ring was on his finger. Expensive. Whoever did it didn't rob him. Maybe he was a generous soul, I said. Rowe glanced at me once, and it was not a friendly glance. Maybe he was meant to be found like that. The building on 42nd was one of those Midtown towers that look clean from the outside and smell like anxiety inside. We rode an elevator with carpet, so thick it probably muffled confessions. The office suite had glass doors and a brass nameplate, Halstead and Klein Executive Consulting. A uniformed patrolman stood at the entrance, looking bored and important inside. A woman in a grey dress sat at a reception desk with her hands folded so tight. Her knuckles were white. She was young, pretty in a nervous way, and her eyes were red. She looked at Rowe like he was both salvation and a threat. "This is Mr. Goodwin," Rowe said. "He's consulting." The woman blinked. "Consulting about..." Rowe didn't bother finishing. "Show us the room." She stood, smoothing her dress like she could smooth her life. "It's back there." We walked past a waiting area with expensive chairs. Nobody sat in comfortably, and down a corridor lined with framed certificates. The air smelled faintly of lemon polish, like someone had tried to disinfect ambition. The door to the reception room was open now. A uniform stood inside, guarding the scene. He nodded to Rowe and let us in. The first thing that hit me wasn't the body. It was the stillness. New York is never still. Even an empty room has noise, pipes, street sound, somebody's temper. This room felt wrapped. Then I saw him. He was on his back on the carpet, arms at his sides, legs straight, as if he'd laid down to take a nap and forgotten the part where you get up. He wore a dark suit that cost more than my first car, a white shirt and a tie knotted perfectly. His hair was combed. His face was calm. If it hadn't been for the color of his skin, too pale, too finished, he could have been waiting for a photographer. It was exactly as they'd told Wolfe. Clean, too clean. There was a bruise at the base of the skull, a dark smudge under the hairline, but no blood on the carpet, no overturned chairs, no broken glass, no ripped clothing. A death without fuss. Cy stepped closer, careful where my shoes went. The shirt was tucked neatly. The cuffs were buttoned, the hands were clean, nails trimmed. Even the shoes shined so well I could see a distorted version of my own face in them. Rowe watched me. "You see it." "I see a man who didn't fight," I said. "Or a man who fought somewhere else." Rowe nodded once. "The medical examiner says the blow could have stunned him, but even stunned men move." "This one." I crouched, not touching. The collar label was visible when the tie loosened slightly with gravity. The Madison maker. The stitching along the placket was white. I traced the line with my eyes to the third button down. There it was. The button was the same as the others, but the thread was not dark green, tight, as if someone had pulled it hard to make it hold. It looked new. "Wrong thread," I murmured. Rowe said. "We pulled it loose by accident when we lifted his shirt to check for wounds. It was barely attached." I straightened and looked around the room. It was furnished with taste and money. A low table, 2 leather chairs, a small sofa, a sideboard with a tray and glasses. Nothing out of place. On the sideboard was a decanter of water and 3 glasses. 2 clean, one with a faint ring of moisture on the coaster, as if someone had recently set it down. I pointed my chin at it. "Agnon drink." "The receptionist says Mr. Halstead offered water to a client yesterday afternoon," Rowe said. "But she didn't see anyone in here this morning before the scream." "Yesterday afternoon," I repeated. "So the moisture ring is..." Rowe frowned. "We just got here. Goodwin, people breathe. Air changes." "Sure," I said, "and yet the room feels wrapped." I walked to the window. The blinds were half closed, letting in stripes of daylight. Outside was 42nd Street, moving and honking and alive. Inside was a still pocket of death. I turned back. "Who uses this room?" Rowe gestured. "Halstead. Klein. Clients. Sometimes they do private interviews. Confidential. That's why it's away from the front." Who found him? The receptionist. Her name is Marla Voss. I glanced at the door. Through the hallway I could see her standing near her desk, hands clasped, staring into nothing. Bring her in, I said. Rose's eyes narrowed. You're not running this. No, I agreed, but I'm looking humor me.
Nero
Rose
Wolfe,
stepped
an
out and
immediate
returned with
author
Marla
of
Voss.
wristwatch,
Up close she
a
looked
tool of
younger,
Shaw's Fulfier
early
watch that
20s,
only runs when
and more
someone touches
scared.
it.
She kept
Open the
her
bag,
eyes off the body
reveal
as if
a
looking at it
beautiful
would pull her
white
into the
leather.
carpet beside
The
it.
watch is tied to
Rose
a
said,
person.
Tell
Then
him
she
what you told
reveals
me.
that
Marla
she is
swallowed.
the story.
I came in at
Open
8.
like it
I unlocked the
went
front.
next
I
and
turned
wait
on the
for part
lights.
2.
I checked the calendar. Mr. Halstead was supposed to be in at 9. Mr. Klein at 10. There was no one here. The only person who could have closed that door before I arrived had a key. Any calls? I asked. 1, she said quickly. A man called at 8:10. He asked if Mr. Halstead was in. I said no. He said he would call back. Did he give a name? Number he didn't. Did you recognize the voice? She hesitated. Her hands clenched. Maybe. I'm not sure. Rose's face hardened. Marla. She breathed out. It sounded like Mr. Klein. Rose didn't react. But I did. That was not small, I said. Then what? Marla's gaze flicked to the floor, then away. At 8:15 I went to make coffee. I walked past this door and it was closed. That was strange because we don't close it unless someone is in here. I thought maybe Mr. Halstead came in early and didn't want to be disturbed. I knocked. No answer. I opened the door and her voice broke. And he was there. Did you touch anything? I asked. No, she cried. Number, I screamed and ran. I called downstairs. The doorman called the police. I nodded. Did you notice anything else? Any smell, any sound? She frowned, thinking. It was quiet, too quiet. Like a room in a library. Rose watched her, then asked, Did you see anyone in the hallway this morning? Marla shook her head. Number, no one. I said, What about yesterday? Who was in here? Marla swallowed again. Yesterday, Mr. Halstead had 3 interviews. 2 were in his office. 1 was in here. Late, around 6. Who? Rose asked. Marla's eyes darted. A man named Lowell Jara. He's a client. Mr. Halstead was excited about him, Rose said. We'll talk about that later. He guided her out. When she was gone, I looked at Rose. Your friend Klein called at 8:10 to see if Halstead was in. Then 5 minutes later a corpse is found in Halstead's private room. That's a coincidence so big it needs its own office. Rose's jaw worked. Klein says he was at home. He says he called because his train was late and he wanted to know if Halstead had arrived. Of course he says that, I said. People always say things that keep them from being arrested. Rose didn't smile. What do you think about the button? I stared at the body again. The green thread sat there like a small insult. Someone and sewed it on in a hurry, I said. But why a man dead doesn't need his shirt buttoned unless he's being presented? Rose's eyes sharpened. Presented to who? To you? I said. To the police. To whoever would see him. And that means the killer cared about the message. Rose stepped closer to the body and stared down. The message is what? I leaned in, letting my eyes take in the details like Wolfe taught me. Without calling it teaching because Wolfe doesn't teach. He tolerates the cuffs, the tie, the hair, the shoes, the calm. Then I noticed something that wasn't calm. The left shoe had a tiny scuff at the inside edge of the heel. Not much. The kind of scuff you'd get from catching your foot on a stair. But the right shoe was perfect. And if a man had walked into this office, down this hallway, into this room, he would have scuffed both shoes sooner or later. Unless he hadn't walked. I straightened slowly. Rose, I said, how did you bring him in? Rose's eyes narrowed. We didn't. No, I said. How did someone bring him in? Because I don't think he walked. Rose stared at me, then at the body, and something shifted in his face, an uncomfortable realization, like stepping on a loose board. I took out my notebook. "I'm going to call Wolfe," I said. "He'll like the part about the presentation," Rowe said. "We haven't even identified him." "I know," I said. "But we've identified something better. We've identified intent." I stepped out into the hallway and used the office phone at the reception desk before Marla could object. When Wolfe's voice came on the line, deep and impatient, I kept it simple. "Boss," I said, "the body is a showpiece, too clean to have gotten here on its own. The wrong button thread is dark green, and it looks new. The room feels wrapped, like someone wanted the air to behave, and I think he was carried in." There was a pause. Wolfe doesn't pause often unless he is feeding a thought. Then he said, "Carried?" "Yes, and the thread appears green." "Yes, you have not mentioned the company name." "Halstead and Klein," I said, "Executive Consulting, private reception room on 42nd, another pause." Then Wolfe's voice changed, just slightly, but enough to make my neck hairs pay attention. "Archie," he said, "do not be rash. Ask the lieutenant whether the building has a service elevator." I blinked. That was Wolfe for you. You offer him a corpse. He asks about elevators. "I'll ask," I said, "and Archie," Wolfe added. "Bring me the list of clients and employees at once, every name, every schedule, and be certain to note carefully any person connected to that thread color." The line went dead. I lowered the receiver and looked at Marla Voss, who was watching me like I was about to predict the weather. "Miss Voss," I said, "I need a list. Names everyone who works here. Everyone who came in yesterday. And if you have a file that mentions anything green, flowers, thread, ink, money, I want it." Her mouth opened. "Why green?" I smiled at her, because sometimes a smile is the only thing between a nervous person and a full collapse. "Because," I said, "in this city, green usually means one of three things: cash envy or somebody's idea of a signature." Rowe leaned close, his voice low. "Goodwin," he said, "you think the killer left a signature with thread?" "I don't think," I said. "Wolfe thinks. I just collect the pieces." Rowe looked back through the doorway at the clean corpse lying like a display in a room that didn't breathe, and for the first time since I'd met him, Lieutenant Rowe looked uneasy in a way that had nothing to do with a dead man and everything to do with a living one. Somebody had taken time, and in New York, time costs. Chapter 2. The button that didn't belong Wolfe didn't stare at the wound first. He stared at the button like it owed him money. It was newer than the shirt, the kind you buy in a hurry from a corner tailor who asks no questions. The stitch pattern wasn't amateur. It was practiced, steady, almost tender. "Someone had dressed him after," Wolfe said, soft as a threat. "Or someone fixed him to make him look like someone else. I should tell you, before we go another inch, that I can't reproduce anyone's exact prose fingerprint on demand. What I can do is give you a Nero Wolfe face-style mystery, crisp, witty narration, Wolfe's methodical logic, the brownstones' rituals, and a fair play puzzle that pays off at the office gathering. Now back to the button, which was sitting in my pocket like a guilty conscience. By the time Lieutenant Rowe and I had drained Marla Voss of names, schedules, and the kind of quiet office gossip that gets exchanged over copy machines, I had enough paper to start my own consulting firm. I tucked it into my notebook, made a point of not stepping on anything that might look important to a policeman, and got out. The room with the corpse stayed behind us, wrapped and still, like it was waiting for applause. Rowe drove me back downtown. He didn't like my cheer. I didn't like his silence. We compromised by not becoming friends. At Wolfe's brownstone on West 35th. Fritz met me in the hall with the look he uses when the world has tracked mud onto his polished floors. If Fritz ever murdered anyone, he'd do it with a dust cloth and leave the corpse cleaner than it started. "Mr. Archie," he said softly. "Inspector Kramer telephoned. He said the police are again in need of help." "They always are," I told him. "Where's Wolfe?" "In the office," Fritz said. "And he is not pleased." "He seldom is," I said, "unless a source behaves." I went into the office, and there he was, Nero Wolfe behind his desk, enormous, contained, and irritated. With his eyes fixed on the small paper envelope I'd laid beside his blotter earlier. Rowe had let me keep it after I promised not to eat it. Wolfe's attention was on the contents the way a banker looks at a counterfeit bill. Beside Wolfe sat Inspector Kramer, who had wedged himself into the red leather chair, as if he intended to claim it by force of bulk. Standing near the door, as if he'd been assigned to play furniture, was Sergeant Pearlie Stebbins, who had the solemn face of a man who'd been raised on warnings. Wolfe didn't look up when I came in. "Close the door, Archie." I closed it. Kramer grunted. "You go see your mannequin." "I saw it," I said. "It's clean enough to rent by the hour." Stebbins blinked at me as if I'd spoken in Latin, which I never do in Wolfe's hearing, because it makes him look smug. I crossed to my desk, got my notebook open, and waited. Wolfe said, "You have names." "I have names," I said, "and a service elevator." That got Wolfe's eyes up finally. "Proceed." I gave them what I'd pulled from Marla Voss and Rowe. The firm was Halstead, and Klein, executive placement, and confidential consulting. Two principals, Edwin Halstead and Martin Klein, a receptionist, Marla Voss. Two junior associates, a woman named Deborah Sloan, and a man named Kenneth Pomeroy, a part-time office runner, Hector Reyes. Cleaning service, a night crew contracted through a company called Brightmaid. Yesterday's late interview at 6. Lowell Jar client, high value, Halstead excited. This morning a call at 8, 10 that Marla thought sounded like Klein Wolfe. Listened without comment, his eyes half-lidded. When I finished, he said, "And the corpse?" "No identification at the scene," I said. "No wallet, no papers, custom shirt from a Madison maker, expensive watch, ring no struggle, bruise at base of skull,
Nero
shirt button
Wolfe
on,
and the
with
umbilical
dark
cord
green
of
thread,
used watch.
sewn
A
neatly,
jeweler
in a
shows
hurry,
country a watch
with
that
practiced
only runs
hands.
when someone touches
Wolfe's
it.
gaze dropped back to
On
the
the back,
envelope.
there
"They
was
called
a
it
pale
green,"
thin wire,
he murmured.
like
"But
when
color
a watch
lies
is
under
tied to a
bad light.
person.
We will
Can you
verify
feel
it."
Let's
Then he
finish
looked
up
at
the
Kramer.
story.
"Inspector,
Hope you
have
like
you
it.
ascertained whether
My
anyone in
next
that office is
analysis of
connected to
art.
Green?" Kramer's eyebrows went up. "Green? What the hell?" "The question is literal," Wolfe said. "Answer it." Kramer puffed. "We're checking. We got the names. We'll check their tailors and their habits and their mother's maiden names if you want." "I do not," Wolfe said. "Want you to do anything except what will be useful." Stebbins cleared his throat, which is what he does when he has something to say that might not sound bright. "We did talk to the doorman and the building superintendent, Mr. Wolfe. There's a service elevator. It's in the back. It goes to the loading dock." Wolfe's eyes went to me. "And the corridor to the reception room?" I nodded. Narrow, clean, no obvious marks. The room itself felt sealed, quiet. Wolfe leaned back, folding his hands over his stomach. "Archie, you said the man did not walk." I said I suspected it. I corrected. One shoe had a slight scuff. The other looked like it had never met a stair. If he walked in from the street, I'd expect matching wear or at least ordinary grime. He had none. Wolfe made a small sound of approval. For Wolfe, that's the equivalent of throwing a parade. "Yes, the cleanliness is not merely a detail, it is a declaration," Kramer snorted. "A declaration of what? That somebody wiped him down?" Wolfe's eyes sharpened. "That someone had time, patience, and motive. A killer who merely wishes to dispose of a body does not press a tie knot." I leaned forward. "I'll add something, boss. The wrong button wasn't crudely sewn. It was competent, even tight, like the sewer had done it before." Wolfe's mouth moved, exactly the stitch pattern is practiced. "Almost." He paused, as if he disliked the word. "Affectionate. That suggests familiarity with clothing and with the deceased." Kramer jabbed a finger toward the envelope. "Or it suggests the killer is a tailor." "It suggests," Wolfe said, "that the killer is not clumsy. Do not rush to professions, Inspector. It is a juvenile habit." Kramer's face reddened. "Listen, Wolfe." Wolfe waved him down. "Archie, the Madison maker. You will go there. You will inquire about the shirt. You will obtain the victim's measurements if possible, his name if possible, and any recent alterations. Also, you will discover whether they stock or sell buttons, and whether they use green thread. I stared at him. Green thread on Madison. Wolfe looked pained. Archie, you will discover the truth, not your opinion of plausibility. Kramer leaned back, annoyed. We already sent a guy to the shirt place. And your guy, Wolfe said mildly, will return with a shrug, a smudge on his report, and perhaps a lie. Archie will return with facts. Stebbins's lips twitched. That was as close as he came to smiling. Wolfe continued. Then you will visit Halstead and Klein. I blinked. Again, Wolfe said. You will speak to the principals, the associates, and the office runner. You will observe. You will listen. You will bring me the details that the police will fail to notice because they are too busy being official. Kramer bristled. We notice plenty. Yes, Wolfe said. And yet you have come here. That settled it. Kramer rose, muttering, and Stebbins followed him out like a quiet shadow. At the door, Kramer turned back. Wolfe, if you're gonna play, don't hide the ball. If you get something, you tell us. Wolfe's reply was calm. If I get something, Inspector, you will benefit. That is sufficient. After they were gone, Wolfe looked at me as if I were an instrument he was about to use and hoped would not squeak. Archie, before you go, the button. He tapped the envelope. I pulled it closer, opened it carefully, and slid the button onto Wolfe's blotter. Wolfe did not touch it. He stared. You've heard of men who can stare a hole in a wall. Wolfe can stare a motive into existence. It is wrong, Wolfe said at last. That's the point, I said. It is wrong in more ways than one, Wolfe said. The color of thread is wrong. The button itself may be wrong. Its thickness, its finish. I leaned in. It's a button, white. Wolfe's eyes flicked to me with disdain. Archie, there are 37 varieties of white. In a button, this one is not the same as the others. That's a neat trick, I said. You can see that without a microscope. I can see it, Wolfe said. Because I attend. You do also when you are not joking. I stopped joking. So the killer replaced a missing button. Yes, Wolfe said. But why? If the purpose was merely to make him presentable, any white button would do. Yet this one is almost the right one. Almost. Meaning the killer tried to match, I said. Meaning, Wolfe corrected, that the killer had access to the shirt or to the man's clothing in a normal context, and chose a substitute that would pass casual inspection, but not scrutiny. Why leave it detectable at all? I asked. Why not use white thread? Wolfe's nostrils flared slightly. Perhaps the killer did not have white thread. Perhaps the killer used what was at hand. Perhaps the killer did not anticipate me. That last part was Wolfe's favorite theory, in any case, that someone failed to anticipate him. I slid the button back into the envelope. All right, Madison first. And Archie, Wolfe added. Do not forget the firm's nature, executive placement consultants. People who arrange other people. People who dress other people up, I said. Wolfe's eyes narrowed with satisfaction. Exactly. Madison Avenue at noon is a parade of polished shoes and polished lies. The shirtmaker's shop was on a side street, discreet with glass that didn't scream for attention. Inside, the air smelled like starch and money, and a man behind a counter looked at me the way a man looks at a piece of lint on a lapel. May I help you? He asked. I hope so, I said. I'm looking for information about a shirt. He tilted his chin. We sell shirts. This one, I said, and produced the label details I'd noted, plus the fact that it was custom and expensive. I didn't mention the corpse right away. You don't announce murder to a man who sells collars. You ease him into it. He listened, his expression tightening, as if he could already smell trouble. Our records are confidential. Sure, I said, and my interest is urgent. He started to repeat the word confidential, and I did the thing I hate doing but do well. I let him see the badge, not mine, Rowe had given me a card, and the name Goodwin carries some weight in certain boroughs when paired with police. I also let him see the kind of calm that suggests I can make his life noisy if he insists on privacy. His shoulders sagged. If it concerns a crime, it concerns a dead man, I said. That did it. He went pale, because dead men don't pay their bills, and they make shops look bad. He led me to a small office, closed the door, and opened a ledger that looked as old as sin. He ran his finger down a column, eyes scanning. Yes, he said. We have the name, the measurements, the order history. And the name, I asked. He hesitated. You must understand. I understand, I said. Give me the name. He exhaled. The client was Elias Brent. I wrote it down. It meant nothing to me. Yet, he continued, warming slightly, now that the catastrophe had a label, Mr. Brent has ordered from us for 6 years. His sizes are consistent. He prefers pearl buttons, 4-hole, matte. Our standard thread is white. So the thread isn't yours, I said. No, he said quickly, absolutely not. And the button? I asked. Is it yours? He frowned. It might be. We use pearl buttons. But this, he reached into a drawer and pulled out a card with buttons attached. He held it beside my envelope sample, comparing like a jeweler. His mouth tightened. Number this button is cheaper, similar, but not ours. The finish is slightly glossy. Also, the edge is not cut the same. So someone replaced a missing button with an almost match, I said. Yes, he said, and did not use our thread. Also, he hesitated, as if reluctant to add insult to death. Mr. Brent would never allow that. He was particular. Particular men have enemies, I said. What did he do? The shopman glanced at the door. He was with a firm, a consulting firm, Halstead & Klein. I kept my face steady. Inside, a bell rang. Any recent alterations? I asked. Yes, the shopman said. 2 weeks ago he brought in 3 shirts. One had a button missing, he said. It fell off. We replaced it properly, with white thread, I said. Of course, he said, offended. Then why is this one wrong? I asked. He spread his hands. Someone replaced our replacement, or the shirt is different. I leaned forward. Do you have the dates and the invoice? He nodded and wrote it down. He also gave me Brent's address and the phone number they had on file. As I stood to leave, he added. Mr. Brent had an appointment scheduled yesterday. He called to reschedule. He sounded upset. With you? With someone, the shopman said. He was not upset with shirts. I walked out into the Madison air with a new name and an old problem. People who are particular usually insist on being particular about the wrong things, and it gets them killed. Halstead & Klein in the afternoon looked the same on the surface. Clean, restrained, expensive. But now the cleanliness felt like a lie they were trying to maintain by force. Marla Voss greeted me with the expression of a person who'd spent the day watching police feet trample her world. Mr. Goodwin, she said, as if my name was a medical condition. I'm back, I said. Lucky you. Are the principals in? She nodded. Mr. Halstead is in his office. Mr. Klein is in the conference room with the police. Then I'll start with Halstead, I said. Marla led me to a door with frosted glass and tapped lightly. A voice called, yes. We went in. Edwin Halstead was the kind of man who'd been built to reassure rich people. Mid-50s, silver hair, a face that smiled easily, and eyes that did not. He rose, smoothing his jacket, and offered his hand as if it were part of a package deal. Mr. Goodwin, he said smoothly. Inspector Kramer mentioned you. You work with Mr. Wolfe. I do, I said. And you work with dead men, apparently. His smile faltered, then returned. Thinner. This is a terrible day. Elias Brent was a valued client. So he knew the name without me giving it. That told me plenty. You were excited about him, I said. Marla said so. Halstead's eyes flicked toward her. A quick, cold glance. Marla is young, she misinterprets. Sure, I said. Excitement looks like something else when you're young. He gestured to a chair. I sat. Marla slipped out, closing the door like she wanted out of any room where words might become evidence. Halstead sat opposite me, perfectly composed. What can I do to help? Start with yesterday, I said. Brent was here late. Halstead nodded. Yes, he came at 6. We spoke privately. In the reception room, I said. Yes, Halstead said. He insisted. He was concerned about confidentiality. And what was he concerned about? I asked. Halstead's eyes held mine. His career. That's vague, I said. It's also true, Halstead said. I leaned back. He died in your reception room, arranged like a display. Somebody dressed him up. Somebody replaced a shirt button with the wrong thread. Do you sew, Mr. Halstead? For the first time his composure cracked. Not much, just a tightening at the mouth. Of course not. Then who here does? I asked. Nobody, he said quickly. We are not. Don't tell me what you aren't, I said. Tell me who could have dressed him. Halstead inhaled, steadied. Mr. Goodwin. The police have been asking these questions all day. It is intrusive. Death is intrusive, I said. He stared at me, then nodded once. Fine. Yesterday Mr. Brent came here because he had been approached by a competitor. He believed someone was trying to poach him. Poach him from what? I asked. Halstead's smile returned faintly, as if he were proud of the word. From a very sensitive position. Sensitive positions make nervous corpses, I said. What position? Halstead's voice went softer. Mr. Goodwin, our firm's value is confidentiality, and my value is persistence, I said. Try me. He paused. Mr. Brent was being considered for a senior role at a foundation. What foundation? A philanthropic one, Halstead said, as if that answered. I watched him. You're avoiding names. Yes, he said, deliberately. All right, I said. Let's skip ahead. What happened after your talk? Halstead folded his hands.
Nero Wolfe
Mr.
and the
Brent left
umbilical
around
cord of
7. He
wristwatch.
seemed
A
calmer.
jeweler shows Wolfe a
Did he drink
watch that
water?
only
I
runs when
asked.
someone touches it.
Halstead
Open the
blinked.
bag. There
Water,
was a
possibly.
hair
Did
sewn
anyone
watch
else enter
that
that room after he
the
left?
watch is tied to a
I
person.
asked.
Then a
No,
jeweler
he
killed.
said.
That's
Not to my
figuring out the
knowledge.
story.
Did you lock the
Hope you
room?
like it.
I asked.
Comment next
He
and I will
hesitated.
talk part 2.
We do not lock it routinely. Then someone could have entered this morning, I said. Yes, he said, which is what the police have suggested. And you? I asked. His eyes hardened. I suggest nothing. I am grieving. Grief looks different on different men, I said. On you it looks like control. He held my gaze. Mr. Goodwin, if you have an accusation... I have questions, I said. One more. What color is your sewing kit thread? He stared at me like I'd lost my mind. I do not have a sewing kit. Then who does? I pressed. He spread his hands. Perhaps Marla. Perhaps Deborah Sloan. Women sometimes. I smiled. Easy. It's 2026. Men sometimes sew, too. His jaw tightened. You're being difficult. I'm being useful, I said, standing. Now I'm going to talk to Martin Klein. Halstead rose quickly. Mr. Klein is under enormous strain. So was Elias Brent, I said. He didn't survive it. Martin Klein was in the conference room with Inspector Kramer and Stebbins. The room smelled like stale coffee and old irritation. Klein was younger than Halstead, early 40s, sharp-featured, with a restless energy that didn't fit the office's polished calm. His tie was slightly crooked, and he kept touching it as if it were choking him. Kramer looked up as I entered. Goodwin, you got something. Maybe, I said. Depends on how much of this is theater. Klein's eyes snapped to me. Who are you? Archie Goodwin, I said. I work for Nero Wolfe. Klein's face tightened. Oh, so Halstead called in the circus. Kramer growled. Watch it. Klein spread his hands. I'm sorry, I haven't eaten. I haven't slept. A man died in our office. If I sound rude, blame the day. I blame the day for lots of things, I said. Let's talk about 8:10 this morning. Klein's mouth twitched. I've already. Marla says. The caller sounded like you, I said. Did you call? Klein's eyes flickered. Yes, I did, I told the police. I called to see if Halstead was in, and why, I asked. Did you need to know at 8:10? Klein's jaw clenched because we had an issue. What issue? I asked. He hesitated, glancing at Kramer as if looking for permission. Kramer said nothing. That's one of his better tricks. Silence that forces people to fill it. Klein exhaled. Elias Brent called me last night. Late. He said he was going to expose something. He said Halstead was lying. Kramer leaned forward. You didn't mention that. Klein snapped. Because you didn't ask me that way. I said, expose what? Klein rubbed his forehead. I don't know. He was angry, half incoherent. He said he had proof. And you thought Halstead might already know, I said. Yes, Klein said. I thought maybe Halstead had. Handled it. Kramer's face darkened. Handled it how? Klein's eyes widened. Not like this. Not murder. I leaned in. Where were you this morning? At home, he said. In bed, my wife will tell you. The train, I take Metro, was delayed. I called in early to say, I might be late. You didn't call to say you might be late, I said. You called to see if Halstead was in. Klein's hands clenched. Because if Halstead was in, it meant Brent might have come. Why would Brent come at 8 in the morning? I asked. Klein's mouth tightened. Because he said he would. That was new. Kramer's eyes narrowed. He said he'd come here at 8. Klein hesitated. Then reluctantly, he nodded. He said he'd come early, before anyone else, and lay everything out. Kramer swore under his breath. I said, so Brent intended to meet Halstead alone. Klein's voice was bitter. That's how Halstead likes it, alone, private. Kramer snapped. Ina, you got any idea who killed him? Klein shook his head too quickly. Number, I watched him. The too quick shake is always interesting. Who else had reason to fear what Brent might expose? I asked. Klein stared at me. You're fishing. Yes, I said. And the water is full of secrets. He looked away. Lowell Jarrah, he said finally. Kramer looked up. Who's that? A client, Klein said. Halstead's favorite. Why would he fear Brent?
Nero Wolfe and the
I
umbilical
asked.
cord of free
Klein's
watch.
laugh was short
Jeweler
and
shows
unpleasant,
Wolfe a watch
because
that only
Brent
guys
wasn't
who
just a
don't
candidate.
visit.
He was a
Open the
gate.
bag,
A gate to
there was
what?
a
I
hair
asked.
thin wire, like
Klein's
the
eyes
watch is
met
tied to a
mine,
person.
and there was something like
Jeweler
resentment
guilt,
there.
let's figure
Toward
out the
Halstead,
story.
toward the dead
If you
man,
like it,
toward the whole
comment
polished
next, and I
machine,
will drop part
to a
2.
foundation, a big one, big money, big influence. And Jarrah wanted in, I said. Klein nodded. Jarrah wanted control. Halstead promised him access. Kramer's voice was sharp. Promised him what? Klein's jaw worked. Halstead promised Jarrah he could place his people in the foundation, quietly, in exchange for, he stopped and spat it. Fees. Bribes, I said. Klein flinched. I didn't say that. You didn't have to, I said. And Brent found out. Klein shook his head. Slower now. I don't know what Brent found out, but he was angry, and he said he had proof. Kramer pushed back his chair. All right, that's enough. Klein stood too, hands shaking slightly. Am I under arrest? Kramer glared at him. Not yet. Klein's face went white. Not yet, he repeated, tasting it like poison. I stepped out with Kramer in the hallway. Kramer grabbed my arm. Goodwin, you got this out of him in 10 minutes. I'm charming, I said. Kramer's grip tightened. If this turns into a bribery mess, the brass will crawl all over me. And if Wolfe's in the middle, it'll get worse. Then solve it fast, I said. Kramer stared at me. You think Halstead did it? I think someone dressed a corpse like a message, I said. And that kind of message is usually sent by someone who thinks he controls the room. Kramer let go. Get back to Wolfe, he growled. And if he's holding something, I'll tell him you threatened him. I said. Kramer snorted and walked away. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe was at the dining table, precisely on time, with Fritz presenting a dish that smelled like the kind of happiness murderers don't deserve. Wolfe ate while I reported. That's another ritual. Wolfe believes food and thought are compatible if the thought behaves. When I finished, Wolfe set down his fork with care. Elias Brent, he said. So, the dead man has a name, and a temper, I added. Wolfe's eyes were distant. He was to expose something. He intended to meet Halstead at 8. Klein called at 8, 10 to see if Halstead was present. Mahler found the body at 8:15. That's the timeline, I said. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Time, he murmured. I waited. Wolfe chewed once, thoughtfully, then swallowed. The wrong button, he said, was intended to create an identity. I blinked. An identity. He already had one. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. Not his name. His role, Archie consider, a clean corpse arranged, dressed, with an altered button. A man presented to be found. Why? To scare someone, I said. To instruct someone, Wolfe corrected. To control someone. The killer wished the observers, police, office staff, perhaps a particular individual, to believe a particular story about Elias Brent. I frowned. What story? Wolfe's gaze went to the envelope again, that he was someone else, or that he had been somewhere else, or that he belonged to a different sphere. I stared. You're saying the button is a costume piece? Yes, Wolfe said, and costumes are chosen with intention. But why choose a wrong button that can be detected? I asked. Why not match it properly? Wolfe's lips curled slightly. Because the killer had to work with what was available, a corner tailor, perhaps, as you observed, or an office sewing kit. Green thread is common in household assortments. It is not common in a shirt-maker's shop, so the killer used household thread, I said, meaning the killer had access to household thread. Or office thread, Wolfe said. I sat back, letting it settle. Mahler, Deborah Sloan, Hector Reyes. Maybe Klein if he has a wife who sews. Wolfe's eyes half lidded. Do not list. Think. Who would dress Elias Brent after death? Someone who found him, I said. Or someone who killed him, Wolfe said, and remained with him long enough to arrange him. Meaning time again, I said. Wolfe nodded. And privacy. I frowned. Private reception room, early morning, service elevator. A building that can be entered quietly if you know the staff. Wolfe's eyes fixed on me. Exactly now, tell me about Lowell Jarrah. Klein says Jarrah wanted influence at a foundation, I said. Halstead promised access in exchange for fees that smell like bribes. Brent found out and threatened to expose. Wolfe's nostrils flared. So the motive is money and power. Always vulgar. But the method is theatrical. Theater is Halstead's style, I said. Smooth, controlled. Perhaps, Wolfe said. Or perhaps it is someone imitating control. I blinked. Imitating. Wolfe leaned back. Archie, the stitching was steady, almost tender, you said. A killer who is panicked does not sew tenderly. A killer who is angry does not press a tie knot. This was done by someone who felt, what shall we call it? Proprietary. Over Brent? I asked. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Or over the narrative? I was quiet a moment, then said, if Brent was going to expose Halstead, why make the corpse clean? Why not let it look like a fight, like a warning? Wolfe's voice went soft. Because the warning is not. I can kill. Many can kill. The warning is I can arrange reality. I can make even death look correct. That is a threat to a certain kind of person. I thought of Halstead's office, the polished smile, the cold eyes. I thought of Klein's bitter resentment. I thought of Lowell Jarrah, whom I hadn't even met yet, wanting control, I said. So who's the certain kind of person? Wolfe's gaze moved toward the stairs, as if the orchids upstairs might supply an answer. Someone who lives by appearances, someone who sells confidence. Consultants, I said. Or clients, Wolfe replied. He picked up his napkin, dabbed his mouth with precision, and set it down. Archie, he said, we will require Lowell Jari. We will require Debray Sloan. We will require the office runner. Hector Reyes, we will require... The sewing kit, I said. Wolfe's eyes flicked to me with approval. Yes, and we will require the thread. He pushed back his chair. You will go tomorrow morning. You will obtain the office sewing kit if it exists. You will discover whether it contains dark green thread. You will observe their trash. You will observe their hands. Their hands, I repeated. Wolfe's voice was calm, but there was steel under it. A person who sews regularly has telltales, fingertips, nails, calluses. Even a practiced hand leaves evidence of practice. I grinned. So now you want me to stare at people's fingers? I want you, Wolfe said, to stop joking and attend. I sobered. All right. And Archie, Wolfe added, tell Inspector Kramer that Elias Brent's death is not merely homicide. It is a communication. That will alarm him. Alarm is useful. I stood. I'll tell him. Wolfe's eyes returned to the
Nero
envelope
Wolfe,
one
the
last time,
umbilical cord
as if
of
the button were
wristwatch.
whispering.
A jeweler shows Wolfie a
Someone,
watch that only
he
runs
said,
when someone touches
almost
it.
to himself,
Open the bag. There was
fixed
a
him
here
to
thin
make
wire.
him look like
Yes,
someone else.
the
I
watch is
felt the
tied to
itch
a
in my
pulse.
neck again,
Then a jeweler kills
the one I
the
get when Wolfe is
the
close to
story.
something, and the
Hope you
world
like
is about
it.
to become less
Come back
comfortable
next
for
when I
everyone in
pick
it.
up part 2.
Outside, New York kept moving, dirty and loud and impatient. Inside, on Wolfe's blotter, a small white button sat in its envelope, like the neatest lie in the city. Chapter 3. Who gets to touch the dead? The victim was Owen Marr, night clerk at the Galloway Hotel, the kind of man who knew keys better than people. Only 3 folks had access to his room without breaking a sweat: the manager, the head of housekeeping, and the hotel tailor. Cameras were a different kind of access. Wolfe walked the halls and listened to doors breathe. Each lock had a different story. The staff spoke in polite sentences, but their eyes spoke in shortcuts, and the button spoke in a whisper. Someone had planned to be close. I have to confess something that would shock the faithful. Nero Wolfe left the house before lunch. If you want the exact conditions that produce that miracle, it's a short list: a fire in the plant rooms, a threat to his cuisine, or a detail so irritating to his mind that it becomes, for him, a personal insult. The third one is the one that got him into a taxi with me that Thursday morning, scowling at the city as if it had been rearranged without his permission. The insult was a name. Elias Brent had looked good on paper, too good, and then, in the most inconvenient way possible, he didn't exist on the dead man's fingers. Rowe had called at 9:15. I took it in the office, with Wolfe present because he was in one of his moods. Silent, heavy, and watching the world as if it were a slow chess opponent. We ran the prints, Rowe said without preamble. Not Brent. The shirt is Brent's. Madison confirmed the order history, but the body is Owen Marr. Wolfe's eyes lifted slightly. That was enough to make Rowe continue. It's Owen Marr, Rowe said. Night clerk at the Galloway Hotel, 38. No record, except one dismissed complaint from a guest about missing jewelry. He's been there 5 years. I felt my eyebrows go up. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Rowe went on. So why's he wearing a Madison custom shirt ordered by a consultant named Elias Brent? Wolfe said into the receiver. Because someone wished him to be Elias Brent. Rowe exhaled hard. Then why kill Mart Halstead and Klein? Wolfe didn't answer that. He looked at me. I said, because whoever dressed him wanted the body found there, not where he died. Rowe's tone sharpened. You think he was killed somewhere else? I think, I said, he was made clean somewhere else. Those aren't the same. Rowe paused. Kramer wants you, wants Wolfe, to come downtown. Wolfe's voice was mild, which is how it sounds when he's about to be difficult. I will not, Rowe said. Then we're coming to you with photos and, Wolfe cut in, you will tell Inspector Kramer that the Galloway Hotel will be the location of interest, the night clerk's room, not the consulting office. Rowe was silent a moment. Then, "How do you know?" Wolfe said. "Because Mr. Marr was a night clerk. His room is where his keys are, and keys, Lieutenant, are time." He hung up. I stared at him. "You're going to the hotel?" Wolfe looked pained, as if I'd suggested he take up boxing. "I am going," he said, "to listen to a lock." "You could listen to a lock on the phone," I said. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Archie, Fritz, who had been hovering in the doorway, like a man prepared to defend his kitchen from change, made a sound of distress when he heard Wolfe's decision. Wolfe ignored him. He always ignores Fritz's distress until it threatens dinner. We went by taxi, Wolfe wedged in the back seat like a proud boulder, me beside him with my notebook, and the unpleasant awareness that New York traffic would get its revenge for being noticed. The Galloway Hotel sat on a side street in the 50s, the kind of place that calls itself Old New York, the way some men call themselves self-made. It had brass, marble, and the faint smell of money that has been handled too many times. The lobby was quiet in the polite way that suggests someone will stop you if you breathe wrong. At the desk, a young man in a grey suit smiled too quickly. He had the look of a hotel employee who is trained to believe every problem can be solved by a warmer tone. "Good morning," he said. "Welcome to the Galloway." Wolfe did not welcome back. He stood, enormous in his dark overcoat, and regarded the clerk as if measuring him for a coffin. I stepped in. "We're here about Owen Marr." The smile froze. I don't know." A man approached from the side, moving fast with that manager stride, confident, brisk, practiced at appearing in emergencies with no sweat. He was in his 40s, neatly dressed, hair perfect, eyes already calculating. "I'm Clark Danner," he said, "hotel manager. You're Mr. Wolfe." Wolfe inclined his head by a fraction. Danner's gaze shifted to me. "And you," he said, "are Mr. Goodwin." "Guilty," I said. "This is awkward, but we'd like to see Owen Marr's room." Danner's smile stayed in place, but it lost warmth. "That room is part of an ongoing police investigation," Wolfe said. "Then you will be relieved to know the police are collaborating." Danner blinked. "They are. Inspector Kramer will confirm," Wolfe said. And he said it with the calm certainty of a man who knows Kramer will hate it. Vance hesitated. The hotel lobby continued being quiet around us, but I felt the attention of staff, eyes in mirrors, ears behind plants. Hotels are full of people who watch without being seen. That's their business. Danner nodded once. "Very well. But you must understand, Mr. Wolfe, we value discretion." Wolfe's lips barely moved. "So do murderers." We followed Vance to the elevators. Wolfe looked at the polished brass as if it might be contagious. I watched Danner because he was watching us. His posture was good, his pace measured, but his right hand kept drifting toward the inner pocket of his jacket. An unconscious habit of a man accustomed to holding access,
Nero Wolfe
perhaps
and the
keys.
umbilical cord of
Up on the
Fritz
6th
watch.
floor,
A
the
jeweler
hallway
shows
carpet
Wolfe
muffled our
watch that
steps.
only
The
runs
air
until
smelled faintly
22.
of linen and something
From the
sharp.
back, there was a
Cleaning
clear
solution, not
symbol,
perfume.
like the watch is tied to
Danner
the
led
belt.
us to a door at the
Then
far
Joe
end,
Hilt
a
led
service
the way to the
corridor nearby
story.
with an
"I
unmarked
hope
door
you
that
like
likely
it.
hid a staff
Come in
stairwell.
next, and I will draw part 2.
This was Mr. Marr's room, he said. A uniformed officer stood nearby and straightened when he saw Wolfe. He looked like he wanted to salute, but didn't know if Wolfe was a general or a problem. He recognized me. Rowe's unit had a way of spreading Goodwin's face faster than the flu. "Mr. Wolfe," the officer said. "Lieutenant Rowe said you might come." Wolfe nodded once. "Open." The officer produced a key card and opened the door. The room was not what you'd call grand single bed, desk, chair, small dresser. It was a staff room, functional, plain, with the kind of cheap framed art that looks like it was chosen by committee, because no one could object to it. Wolfe stepped in, then stopped in the doorway and looked around as if deciding whether the room had earned his presence. Then he moved with surprising care, like a man crossing a line he does not like to cross. He didn't go to the bed. He didn't go to the dresser. He went to the door. He stood close, listening. I looked at Vance. "You ever watch him work?" Danner swallowed. "Not like this." Wolfe's head tilted slightly. His eyes were on the lock. His fingers did not touch it. He simply listened, as if expecting it to confess. I finally asked, quietly, "What are you hearing, boss?" "The door breathing." Wolfe didn't glance back. "This lock is not new," he said. "It has been used often. It is well maintained. Yet, it has been handled recently by someone unfamiliar." Dana stiffened. "That's..." Wolfe turned slowly to face him. "Do not contradict what you do not comprehend." That's Wolfe in the field, less polite, more dangerous. Wolfe moved into the room and began to look, not with the frantic rummaging of police, but with the patience of a man in a library, scanning a shelf. He studied the desk surface, clean, too clean. He studied the wastebasket, empty, too empty. He looked at the bedspread, smooth, almost tucked. Then he looked at me. "Archie." I understood. I walked to the closet, opened it carefully. The hangers were there, a few shirts, a cheap suit, a uniform jacket with the Galloway emblem, nothing that matched the Madison shirt, no expensive tie, no polished shoes. "He didn't live like Brent," I said. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Of course not. He was made to look like Brent." Dana spoke. "Tight. Are you implying Mr. Marr was dressed here?" Wolfe said. "I am implying nothing. I am observing. This room has been sanitized, either by police or by hotel." Vance's face flushed. "We did not sanitize." The officer by the door shifted, uncomfortable. "We secured it last night, sir," he said to Wolfe. "Crime scene unit did their sweep." Wolfe made a small sound. "Yes. And they removed the obvious, the subtle remains, if one knows where to look." He walked to the bathroom, glanced in, then came back. His gaze went to the dresser. He opened the top drawer. Inside were socks, folded under them, a small sewing kit in a plastic case. My heart gave a small jump. Wolfe's eyes did not change, but I knew he'd felt it too, Wolfe said. "Mr. Vance, this room contains a sewing kit. Did Mr. Marr sew?" Dana's voice was careful. "Many staff mend their uniforms." Wolfe lifted the plastic case with 2 fingers, like it might be infected with incompetence. He opened it. Inside were needles, small scissors, buttons and spools of thread. Lone spool was dark green. Wolfe did not smile. He simply looked at the green thread with the calm satisfaction of a man who has found a missing tooth in a bite of bread. I leaned in. "That's your whisper," Wolfe said softly. "Yes." Dana's eyes went to the thread, and I saw a flicker, fear or calculation or both. "That could belong to anyone," he said quickly. "Those kits are generic." Wolfe's voice was flat. "Then explain why it is here now, when the room has been cleaned." Dana stiffened. "We did not clean the room." Wolfe's eyes went to the officer. "When your men searched, did they leave this?" The officer looked startled. I don't know, sir. CSU logged items. If it was considered personal property..." Wolfe's gaze returned to Vance. "Who has access to this room without registering?" Vance opened his mouth. I answered for him. "Manager, housekeeping, maintenance." Wolfe's eyes held Vance. "Name the head of housekeeping." Vance's jaw worked. "Lydia Tarrant." "And the hotel tailor?" Wolfe asked. Dana blinked. "Tailor, you have one," Wolfe said. Vance's eyes shifted. "Too quick, too telling. We have a alterations room for guests." "You have a tailor," Wolfe repeated. Vance's smile returned, strained. "Yes, Bernard Pell." Wolfe closed the sewing kit and set it back in the drawer, as if returning a book to its shelf. "Then," he said, "only 3 persons could have entered this room and left it orderly without observation: the manager, the head of housekeeping, and the tailor." Vance protested. "That's absurd." Wolfe ignored him. "Archie, note their names. Also note that the sewing kit remains. Someone wished it to be found, or someone was careless." I wrote Vance Tarrant Pell, green thread. Then I asked, "Boss, why would a killer leave the thread behind if it matches the button?" Wolfe looked at me with a kind of weary disdain. Because the killer is not trying to hide everything, only the correct thing. The killer's aim is not invisibility, it is narrative. The word narrative again. Wolfe was on it like a dog on a bone. We left Ma's room and followed Vance to a small administrative office off the service corridor. Plain, functional, and designed to keep staff matters out of guest sight. Wolfe refused to sit, so we all stood, which made Vance look like he was being questioned by a judge with no bench. Wolfe said, "Mr. Vance, when did you last see Owen Marr alive?" Dana's lips tightened. "Yesterday morning. He checked out at 7. "He was a night clerk," I said. "His shift ended at 7. Vance nodded. "He worked nights." "He stayed in that room because it's convenient." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Convenient for whom?" Dana blinked. "For him," Wolfe continued, "who can enter his room." Vance's answer was prompt, rehearsed. Housekeeping during the day, maintenance if needed, management in emergencies. "And your tailor, Mr. Pell?" Wolfe asked. Vance frowned. "He doesn't enter rooms. He works in alterations." Wolfe's voice was calm. "Then bring him." Vance stiffened. "Mr. Wolfe, we can't just—" "You can," Wolfe said, "or the police can. Choose the method you prefer." Vance's nostrils flared. He glanced at the uniformed officer, who looked as if he'd rather be anywhere else. Then Vance nodded sharply and left. While he was gone, Wolfe turned his head slightly and listened to the hallway. He actually listened. "Like a man measuring sound," I said. "If you're going to do that, at least tell me what you're hearing." "The hotel breathes," Wolfe said. "The staff doors do not. They are opened and
Nero
closed with
Wolfe
purpose.
and the umbilical
Purpose
cord
makes
of his
sound."
watch.
I
A
watched
jeweler
him.
shows
Field
you
work
feel a
didn't suit
watch
Wolfe
that only
physically,
runs when someone
but
touches
mentally
it.
it sharpened him.
Open the
He
bag.
seemed more
There was
awake,
hair
more
on the
irritable,
wire, like
and therefore more
the watch is
dangerous.
tied to a person.
Dana
The
returned with a
jeweler
woman
looked.
first.
Let's figure out the story.
Lydia Tarrant.
Hope you
She was
like
in her
it.
late 50s,
Comment next,
solidly
and I will
built,
drop part
hair
2.
pinned tight, expression controlled. If she ran housekeeping, she ran it the way generals run armies. She gave Wolfe a look that was half irritation, half assessment. "You wanted me," she said to Vance, not to Wolfe. Dana gestured stiffly. "Mrs. Tarrant, this is Mr. Nero Wolfe. He's assisting the police." Tarrant's eyes moved to Wolfe. "Police don't usually need assistance," Wolfe said. "They do not need it. They benefit from it. Sit." Tarrant didn't sit. "I have a schedule." Wolfe's eyes stayed on her. "Then answer quickly. When was Mr. Marr's room cleaned?" Tarrant's jaw clenched. "It wasn't. Not since the police," I supplied. Tarrant's eyes flicked to me. "Not since it was secured." Wolfe said, "Who has master access?" Tarrant's face was flat. "Management, housekeeping supervisors, security." "Not the tailor," Wolfe said. "The tailor has no reason," she replied. Wolfe held her gaze. "Reason is not required, only opportunity." Tarrant's mouth tightened. "Are you accusing my staff?" Wolfe's tone was mild. "I am interrogating your facts." That irritated her more than an accusation would have. "My staff are loyal," she said sharply. "Loyalty," Wolfe murmured, "is often rented." Tarrant's eyes hardened. "In this hotel, loyalty is required." Wolfe nodded slightly. "Then tell me about Owen Marr's loyalty. Was he content?" Tarrant's face changed. A small twitch at the mouth. "That twitch was worth a paragraph in my notebook," Wolfe asked. Dana said quickly, "There was an old incident. Dismissed." Tarrant shot Vance a look that could peel paint. "It wasn't dismissed because it was false," she said. "It was dismissed because the guest didn't want publicity." Wolfe's eyes sharpened. "Jewelry." Tarrant's mouth tightened. "A guest claimed a necklace was missing from the room's safe. Owen was the clerk on duty that night." "And was it found?" I asked. "No," Tarrant said. "But it was never proven he took it." Wolfe said, "So he had a shadow. A man with a shadow is easily directed." Tarrant glared. "Directed by whom?" Wolfe didn't answer. He looked at the door. Dana returned again. this time with a man who looked like he'd been born holding a measuring tape. Bernard Pell was thin, in his late 60s, with neat hands and bright eyes. His jacket had chalk marks on the sleeve. If he wasn't a tailor, he was a convincing impersonation. Pell stopped short when he saw Wolfe, like a man who recognizes trouble, even if he's never met it. Dana said, "Mr. Pell, I know who he is." Pell said quietly, his eyes slid to me. "And you are the assistant." I smiled. "We're famous. It's a burden." Pell didn't smile back. "You wanted to see me?" Wolfe said. "Yes. Sit." Pell sat, quickly, like a man who knows better than to challenge gravity when it's wearing a suit. Tarrant remained standing, arms folded. Vance hovered. Wolfe said to Pell, "You are the hotel tailor." "I do alterations," Pell said. "Guests and staff. Hemming, buttons, repairs." "Do you sew buttons?" Wolfe asked. Pell blinked. "Of course." Wolfe leaned slightly forward. "Do you sew them with green thread?" Pell's eyes widened a fraction. "Green thread? I use many colors." Wolfe's voice stayed calm. "Show me your sewing kit." Pell swallowed. "It's in the alterations room." "Fetch it," Wolfe said. Dana started. "Mr. Wolfe." Wolfe cut him off. "Now." Vance looked as if he wanted to refuse, and also wanted to keep his job. Pell rose and left, moving faster than his age suggested. While Pell was gone, Wolfe turned to Tarrant. "Head of housekeeping, you have keys." Tarrant's chin lifted. "Yes. Are any keys missing?" Wolfe asked. Tarrant blinked. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "How do you know?" Tarrant's jaw tightened. "We inventory, Tode?" Wolfe asked. Tarrant hesitated. "Not." "Tode?" Wolfe nodded as if that answered everything. Then he turned to Vance. "Mr. Vance," he said softly, "you will tell me who requested Owen Marr's schedule last week." Vance's face went blank. "No one." Wolfe's voice sharpened slightly. "Do not lie to me. I will hear it." Vance stared, then swallowed. "We had inquiries." "Inquiries by whom?" Wolfe pressed. Vance's eyes flicked toward the hallway, toward the lobby,
Nero
toward the
Wolfe
life
and
of
the
the
umbilical
hotel.
cord,
"A
the
man,"
wristwatch,
he said
a
carefully,
jeweler shows for
"from a
free
consulting
watch that
firm."
only runs when someone touches it.
I felt my
Open the
stomach
bag,
tighten.
there was a
Wolfe's
piece
eyes
of thin
stayed on
wire,
Vance.
like
"Name,"
the watch is tied
Wolfe
to a
said.
person. Then a jeweler
Vance
feel it.
exhaled.
Let's figure out the
"Halstead
story.
and Klein."
Hope you
Wolfe
like
sat
it.
back slightly,
Comment next, and I
satisfied.
will drop part 2.
"When?" 4 days ago," Vance said. "He said it was confidential. He was placing someone in a role and wanted to confirm references." Wolfe's tone was flat. "And you gave him information?" Vance bristled. "We cooperate with reputable firms." Wolfe's eyes were cold. "Reputable firms do not ask about night clerks." At that moment, Pell returned, carrying a cloth bag. He set it on the table with hands that were steady, but his eyes were not. He opened the bag and produced a sewing kit that looked like it belonged in a museum. Polished wooden case, compartments neat, spools arranged like soldiers. Wolfe did not touch it. He looked. Pell said, "This is mine," Wolfe asked. "Do you recognize this?" He gestured subtly, and I produced the envelope with the wrong button, sliding it onto the table. Pell leaned in, careful, like he was approaching a sleeping snake. His eyes narrowed, and his face changed in a way that tailor eyes do when they see a stitch. They become judgmental, he said quietly. "That was sewn by someone who knows what he is doing." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "You," Pell stiffened. Wolfe's voice was mild. "Then who?" Pell hesitated. "It could be any competent sewer," Wolfe said. "Do not evade. The stitch pattern is characteristic." Pell's jaw tightened. "Characteristic of someone trained." Wolfe held him. "Trained by you." Pell looked at Vance, then at Tarrant, then back at Wolfe. Finally he said, "I have trained staff, housekeeping sometimes. They tear uniforms. They ask for help." Tarrant snapped, "My staff are not tailors." Pell's eyes flicked to her. some of them sew. Wolfe's gaze went to the spools in Pell's kit. Do you have green thread? Pell's hand hovered over the kit, then withdrew. Yes, I have green. Wolfe's voice was calm. Show it. Pell opened a compartment. There were spools, white, black, grey, navy, beige, and one spool of dark green. I watched Wolfe's eyes. He didn't need to touch it. He'd already built the picture. Wolfe said, Mr. Pell, when did you last use green thread? Pell's mouth tightened. Yesterday. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. For what? Pell hesitated. A repair, a guest item, a sweater. Name the guest, Wolfe said. Pell swallowed. I don't keep names for every small repair. Wolfe's tone hardened. You do in this hotel. Pell looked at Vance. Vance's face had gone pale. Wolfe said softly, Mr. Danner, the tailor is afraid of you. Danner's voice was thin. That's ridiculous. Wolfe continued as if Vance hadn't spoken. Mr. Pell, did someone instruct you to sew that button? Pell's eyes widened. Number, I never saw that shirt. Wolfe said. Then did someone instruct you to provide thread? Pell's lips pressed tight. Tarrant's voice was sharp. What is this? Are we being accused in our own hotel? Wolfe turned his
Nero
head
Wolfe,
slightly to
the
her.
umbilical cord of his
Madam,
watch.
you are being
A jeweler's
examined.
clothes
Your
fulfill a
outrage
watch
is
that only
decorative.
runs when someone touches it.
That shut her up,
Open the back,
mostly.
there was a
Wolfe's
pure silver
eyes
wire,
returned to
like
Pell.
the watch is
Answer.
tied to a person.
Pell's
And
shoulders
to
sagged.
the
Yes,
figure
he
of
said
the story.
quietly.
Hope
Simone
you like
asked me
it.
for thread.
Comment
Wolfe's
next,
voice
and I will
remained
go part
calm. Who? Pell hesitated again. Then, with a kind of resignation, he said, The manager. Danner's head snapped. That's a lie. Pell flinched but held. You came to the alterations room yesterday afternoon. You asked for dark green thread. You said it was for a flower arrangement. For tying. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. Flowers. I thought of Wolfe's orchids. I thought of green thread. I thought of a man trying to tie a narrative with whatever he had at hand. Danner's face flushed a deep, angry red. This is outrageous. Mr. Pell is confused. He's old. Pell's eyes flashed. I am old, not blind. Wolfe said, Mr. Vance, why would you need green thread? Vance's jaw worked. He looked trapped, and trapped men either confess or attack. He attacked. This is harassment, Danner snapped. We have cooperated fully. The police, Wolfe interrupted. We'll be interested to know that you supplied distinctive thread on the day before a body was discovered with a wrong button, sewn with that thread. Danner's face went pale. His eyes flicked toward the door, toward escape. Wolfe's voice was mild, almost conversational. Do not flee, Mr. Danner. You are not yet accused of murder, only of stupidity. That stopped Vance better than a handcuff would have. I cleared my throat. Boss, can we step back? Owen Marr, night clerk, ends up dressed like Elias Brent and planted in Halstead and Klein's reception room. That means someone got Marr's body, alive or dead. Out of this hotel and into that office. The easiest route is service elevator, loading dock, vehicle. Wolfe's eyes stayed on Vance. And the easiest access to Marr is through keys. Tarrant's arms tightened. We keep keys controlled, Wolfe said. Not perfectly. Tarrant glared. Are you implying my staff? Wolfe looked at her, and his voice went colder. Madam, I am implying that someone who knows keys better than people, Owen Marr, was approached by someone who knows people better than keys. The room was silent. Then Wolfe said to Danner, You will tell me who from Halstead and Klein asked about Owen Marr's schedule. Danner swallowed. His eyes looked suddenly tired. It was Deborah Sloane. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. The junior associate. Danner nodded, barely. She said she needed a reference for a placement. Wolfe said, and you gave it. Danner's voice was defensive. We cooperate. She was charming. She said it was urgent. Wolfe's tone was flat. Charm is a tool, Mr. Danner. In capable hands it becomes a weapon. I scribbled. Sloane asked about Marr. Danner gave info. Danner got thread. Wolfe turned his head slightly, listening again. Not to the lock this time, but to the room. Then he said, "Archie, we have learned who could touch the dead. Now we must learn who touched the living." "You mean who got close to Ma?" I said. Wolfe nodded. Ma was a night clerk. He knew keys. He also knew secrets. Hotels are made of secrets. I said, "So Ma could have had something on someone." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Or someone had something on Ma." Tarrant snapped. "Owen Ma was a quiet man." Wolfe looked at her. "Quiet men are useful. They hear what loud men miss." Dana's voice was low now, controlled again. "Mr. Wolfe, if you are finished, I must." Wolfe cut him off. "Number, you must not. You will remain available. The police will speak with you further. In the meantime, you will provide me with the key inventory for this floor and the service corridor, and the log for staff elevator use for the last 48 hours. Dana's eyes widened. "That's internal." Wolfe's tone was calm. "It is also relevant. You will comply, or I will have Inspector Kramer compel." Dana hesitated, then nodded sharply. He left the room as if walking away from a bad dream. Wolfe turned to Pell. "Mr. Pell, you will prepare a sample stitch using that green thread. You will match, as closely as you can, the stitch on the wrong button." Pell blinked. Wolfe's eyes were cold. "Because your hands remember patterns, and so do mine." Pell swallowed and nodded. Wolfe then looked at Tarrant. "Madam, you will tell me which members of your staff do not protect them. Murder is heavier than loyalty." Tarrant's jaw tightened, but there was fear under her control now. She nodded stiffly. "There are two, Clara Hines and Jaya Patel. Both mend uniforms." Wolfe nodded once. "Good." We left the hotel shortly after, with Wolfe looking grimly satisfied, and me feeling that familiar itch. The sense that the world had just tilted, and the people who thought they were safe hadn't noticed yet. In the taxi back downtown, Wolfe stared out the window without seeing traffic. "They speak in polite sentences," he murmured. "And their eyes speak in shortcuts," I said. Vance's eyes spoke in a sprint. Wolfe's mouth tightened. "Yes, yet he is not our killer. He is only one who touched the thread." "You're sure?" I asked. Wolfe turned his head slightly. "Archie, if Dana had killed, he would not leave the thread in Ma's drawer. He would not permit the sewing kit to remain. A man who profits from discretion does not manufacture spectacle. He hires it. He is guilty of cooperation, not invention." "So who invented this?" I asked. Wolfe's gaze went distant. "Someone with motive to create a false corpse. Someone who needed Elias Brent to appear dead, while keeping Elias Brent alive." I sat back, letting that sink in. "If the body is Ma dressed as Brent, then Brent is missing." Wolfe's voice was calm. "Not missing, absent. There is a difference," I said. "And Halstead and Klein are up to their collars in it." Wolfe nodded slightly. "Executive placement, Archie. People who move other people into roles. People who understand costumes. People who understand keys."
Nero Wolfe and
"And
the
someone
miracle
planned to
code
be
of
close,"
wristwatch.
I said,
A jeweler
thinking of
shows
the
Wolfe
green
a
thread,
watch that
the
only
neat
runs when
stitch,
someone touches it.
the access. Wolfe's
Open the
eyes
bag,
narrowed.
there was a
"Yes,
pure thin
back
white
at the
thread.
brownstone."
The watch
Fritz
is
met
tied
us with
to
the
a
look of a man
person.
who has been
The jeweler
forced to
really
accept that the world is
really loves the
imperfect.
story.
Wolfe ignored it
Hope
and
you
went
like
straight to
it.
his office.
Comment next,
He
and I will
sat,
draw part
heavy
2.
in his chair, and held out his hand. "The button," he said. I gave it to him in its envelope. Wolfe stared at it again, as if it owed him money. And in a way, it did. "It owed him truth," he said softly. "The dead man is Owen Ma. The costume is Elias Brent. Therefore the murderer wishes Elias Brent to be dead," I asked. "Or wishes someone else to believe Brent is dead." Wolfe's eyes lifted to mine. "Exactly." He leaned back. "Now, Archie, we will summon Debra Sloan." I blinked. "Summon?" Wolfe's mouth tightened. "Invite, if you prefer to be sentimental. But yes, she has touched the living by asking for Ma's schedule. Soon she will touch the truth, whether she enjoys it or not." I grinned, despite myself, And the others? Wolfe's eyes narrowed. We will also require Mr. Halstead, Mr. Klein, and Lowell Jarrah. And we will require Mr. Vance, because frightened managers are talkative when pressed. We will require Mr. Pell's stitch sample. We will require the elevator logs. He paused, then added, with a kind of quiet relish, and we will require Elias Brent. I stared. Live. Wolfe's voice was soft as a threat. Live, Archie, if he is dead, the whole arrangement collapses into mere vulgarity, and this is not vulgar. This is designed. Outside, New York continued to be dirty and loud and impatient. Inside, on Wolfe's desk, the wrong button sat like a small white lie tied with green thread, waiting for the right hands to pull it apart. Chapter 4. The needle's fingerprint, the Galloway's basement, smelled like heat, soap, and old secrets boiled clean and folded flat. If you want to hide evidence in New York, you don't bury it, you launder it. Wolfe disliked basements on principle. He went anyway. Because principles, like alibis, are flexible when the facts get stubborn. He stood near the swinging door to the laundry as if the concrete might try to climb his shoes, while I did the introductions and absorbed the damp air. Rows of industrial dryers hummed with the steady appetite of machines that never cared what they swallowed. A woman in a housekeeping smock, Lydia Tarrant's lieutenant, named Clara Hines, looked offended at our presence, as though murder had interrupted her schedule. "This is ridiculous," she said. "We wash sheets. We don't tailor corpses." "That," I told her, "is a charming way to put it." Wolfe ignored the charm he watched. At her far end, behind a table scarred by irons and years, a man was sorting thread spools the way a bartender sorts bottles, by shade, not by label. He was thick through the shoulders, sleeves rolled, fingers quick and careful. His name, Dana said with forced neutrality, was Hank Rourke, officially Henry Rourke, who handled staff repairs when needed. The hotel had a guest tailor, Bernard Pell, upstairs. Rourke was the one who kept uniforms from falling apart downstairs. Rourke didn't like being watched. His eyes kept flicking up, then back to his spools, as if Wolfe's gaze could snag a stitch. Wolfe spoke at last. "Mr. Rourke, you keep thread as a painter keeps pigments." Rourke shrugged. "Thread's thread." "No," Wolfe said. "Thread is testimony." I felt the room tighten. Even the dryers seemed to hum a little more quietly, as if they wanted to hear. Wolfe stepped closer to the work table. Not touching, simply observing. "Housekeeping claims they use plain white," he said, his voice mild. "Cheap and fast." Clara Hines bristled. "We do." "And management claims they do not sew at all," Wolfe continued. From behind me, Dana's voice snapped. "We don't." Wolfe nodded, as if granting them their little comforts. Then he tilted his head toward Rourke's open drawer. Inside was a neat madness. Spools in shades that had no business near a white shirt. Smoke, gray, ink, blue, moss, green, and something that looked like tarnished pennies. Wolfe pointed with his eyes. "That one." Rourke hesitated. "Which one?" "The copper, brown," Wolfe said. I blinked. Copper, brown wasn't the green thread we'd been chasing. It was warmer, darker, oddly specific, and more suspicious for being so. Rourke's hand hovered, then pulled the spool out. The thread gleamed faintly, like old money. Clara Hines shook her head hard. "We don't have that. We use white." "That," Wolfe said, "is precisely why it is interesting." He turned to me. "Archie." I opened the envelope with the wrong button and held it so Wolfe could see. Not the button this time, the stitch. Under the bright laundry lights, the thread on it wasn't green at all. It was copper, brown, rose dark green, had been a guess made under office lighting and pressure. Wolfe hadn't guessed. He'd insisted we verify it. Rourke's face changed, just a fraction, but enough. A man who sews recognizes thread the way a violinist recognizes a note. Wolfe did not accuse him, he asked, gently, like a man offering a riddle to a child. "Who repairs a shirt?" Wolfe said. "On a dead man." The dryers hummed, the washers thumped. Nobody answered. Dana swallowed. Clara Hines stared at the floor. Rourke looked at the spool in his hand, as if it had suddenly become heavier. He said, into the silence, "That color isn't something you grab by accident." Rourke's jaw worked. "People ask for thread," he muttered. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Who asked you, Mr. Rourke?" Rourke's fingers tightened on the spool. "I don't remember." Wolfe's voice stayed soft, but it carried. "You remember every shade you keep. You will remember the person who required copper, brown for a white shirt." The hum of the dryers filled the space like a city chewing evidence, steady, patient, indifferent, and in that indifferent sound, the truth began to sweat. Rourke finally lifted his eyes to Wolfe. "It was a woman," he said hoarsely. "Well-dressed, not staff. She said it was urgent. She said she'd pay." Wolfe did not move. "Name her." Rourke swallowed. "I don't know her name, but you know her face," Wolfe said. Rourke nodded once, miserable. "Yes." Wolfe's gaze shifted to Vance. "Then you will provide photographs of every associate and client who visited this hotel in the last week. Mr. Rourke will point to the one who bought testimony by the spool." No one argued. The room answered Wolfe. The only way it could, with silence and the steady mechanical breath of laundry machines working away at stains that never truly go away. Chapter 5. The Galloway's second skin. The manager, Clark Dana, smiled too much, like he practiced in mirrors for bad news. He met us in the lobby with sympathy arranged as neatly as his tie. "Terrible business," he said, and managed to sound as if he were apologizing for a rainstorm. "Owen checked in a guest late. Then, well, must have had an accident." "An accident," I said. "That irons shirts." Dana's smile twitched and recovered. "People speculate." Wolfe did not speculate. He watched. The Galloway's lobby had a second skin, polish over tension, and Dana wore it like uniform cloth. Wolfe moved through it without touching, a large man in a careful suit, circling as if the marble were water. "Your night clerk was
Nero
Owen
Wolfe,
Marr,"
the umbilical
Wolfe said.
cord
"He
of
checked
his
in a
work.
guest late."
A jeweler shows
When?
Wolfe a
Dana
watch
glanced
that only
toward the
runs
desk,
when someone
toward the
touches
young
it.
clerk who suddenly
From
found
the
a
back,
spot on the
there
brass
was a
rail
pale
fascinating.
green wire
"Tuesday," he
that
said.
the watch is tied
"After
to a
midnight,
person.
a gentleman
Jeweler
paid in
built
cash."
Let's figure it out the
"Name?"
story.
Wolfe
Hope
asked.
you like
Dana's
it.
smile tightened.
Comment next, and
He
I will
declined
do
to give
part 2.
one. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "He rented a room without a name." "We allow discretion," Dana said, too quickly. Wolfe turned to the desk ledger without asking permission. He didn't touch it, he indicated, and I did the touching. The entries were neat, uniform, the handwriting trained. And then, there it was, one room rented, rate paid, method marked cash, and the name line blank. A gap in a ledger is louder than ink. Wolfe said mildly, "A ghost room." Dana's voice sharpened. "It was paid for. Privacy," Wolfe replied, "is not purchased with comfort. It is purchased with secrecy." Wolfe's gaze lifted. "And who had keys?" Dana spread his hands. "Housekeeping, security, management," Wolfe finished, "and Owen Marr." Then he spoke with quiet courtesy that made my neck itch. "Mr. Dana, you will provide the security footage for Tuesday night, from the service entrance and the elevator bank." Dana's smile returned, thinner. "Our cameras don't cover everything. They cover enough. And if they do not, then you will explain why a hotel that sells discretion also sells darkness." Dana's practiced smile faltered. In a building full of keys, a nameless room meant one thing. Someone wanted privacy more than comfort. Wolfe kept circling the lobby like a shark with manners, and Dana, still smiling, looked like a man realizing the water had teeth. Chapter 6. The tape that learned to forget. The security office at the Galloway was a narrow room behind a door that pretended to be a closet. It smelled of stale coffee, warm circuitry, and the quiet pride of men who watch other men without being seen. Clark Dana brought us in with his smile pinned on, the way you pin a boutonniere over a bruise. A young security supervisor hovered, eager to please and terrified of blame. Wolfe stood in the doorway, refusing the chair as if sitting might implicate him in incompetence. Dana pointed at the monitor wall. "We have footage," he said. From the lobby, the service entrance, the elevators. Until midnight, I said. Dana's smile twitched. There's a gap. It wasn't a crash. A crash is messy, stutters, static, timestamps that trip over themselves. This gap was clean. The time code marched up to 11 hours, 59 minutes, and 58 seconds. Then the screen blinked, and at 12 hours, 0 minutes, and 1 second, it resumed with the bland calm of a man who has been trained not to notice. A blank stare that had learned manners. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. An intentional skip, he said softly, clean as a cut purse. Dana lifted his hands. We don't control the system, it's automated. Sometimes, Wolfe interrupted, a machine lies only when a human instructs it to. I leaned in close enough to read the event log. There's an admin access entry at 11:58, I said. Then an export. Then a deletion. Dana's face paled. That's technical, I don't. Wolfe's voice stayed mild. Who has the administrative code? Dana's smile tried to return and couldn't find its way back. Only 2 people, he admitted. Me and Nate Bricks. Maintenance, I said. Dana nodded. He handles systems, boilers, wiring, he's indispensable. Wolfe made a small sound. Indispensable men are frequently guilty. They brought Bricks up from the basement like a reluctant tool. He was in his 30s, broad with hands scarred from honest work, and nails that never quite lost the black line of grease. He held a wrench the way some men hold a cigarette, like an extension of their mood. He stared at Wolfe as if Wolfe were a foreign inspection. You Nate Bricks? I asked. He nodded once. Yeah, Wolfe said. You know the administrative code for the security system. Bricks's jaw tightened. I know it. So what? So you used it, Wolfe said. Bricks barked a laugh. I was in the boiler room. The boiler's been acting up. I was fixing it. I fell asleep down there. Wrench for a pillow. Ask anybody. Wolfe looked at him, as if weighing the word anybody for sincerity. I believe the boiler was broken, Wolfe said. Bricks's mouth twitched. See, tell him. Wolfe's eyes went colder. But not the way you mean. Bricks blinked. What's that supposed to mean? It means, Wolfe said gently, that blank footage isn't missing. It is stolen, and a thief is never content with one theft. The room went quiet except for the hum of machines doing their dull, obedient work. Dana swallowed. Bricks's grip tightened on the wrench. And Wolfe, still in the doorway, still refusing the chair, looked like a man who had just found the seam in the hotel's second skin. Chapter 7. The pocket that should have been empty. Owen Marr's uniform jacket arrived at the brownstone in a flat cardboard box. The way the police deliver a man's life after they've finished stepping on it. Lieutenant Rowe brought it himself with the stiff care of someone carrying blame. It's property, he said, not evidence. CSU cleared it. Wolfe didn't look at him. He looked at the jacket as if it were a witness that had been coached. Archie, Wolfe said. I opened the box. The jacket was Galloway grey, serviceable, with brass buttons stamped with the hotel's crest. It smelled faintly of starch and basement heat. The pockets were empty, until they weren't. Wolfe did not rummage. He indicated. I slid my fingers into the inner breast pocket and felt metal. I drew out a small brass button. It was not a Galloway crest button, it was plain brass. The same size and rim style as the expensive shirt buttons Owen Marr had worn in death. Same maker's stamp on the back, the kind the Madison shop would recognize without a second glance. But this one had a faint scratch across the face, a neat crescent, like a moon caught on the edge of a key. I set it on Wolfe's desk blotter. It made a soft sound, absurdly loud in the office. A replacement kept as a souvenir, I said, or a piece of a struggle. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. A replacement, he murmured, kept by a man who did not own the shirt. Rowe shifted. Inspector Kramer, who had planted himself in the red leather chair like a warning, leaned forward. At Wolfe's request, delivered through me, naturally. We also had Clark Dana, waiting in the hall, and Nate Bricks in the front room, both available. and both pretending they weren't sweating. Wolfe didn't call them in yet. He wanted the button to do its work first. He placed the brass button on the center of the desk, carefully, like a chess piece. Then he sat back and watched the room. I watched too. It's amazing what people will do with their eyes when they think no one is counting. Rowe stared at the button as if it might grow teeth. Kramer looked at it once, then at Wolfe, irritated that a man could make a piece of metal feel like a subpoena. Wolfe said softly, "Bring Mr. Danner. Bring Mr. Bricks." When they came in, the air changed. Danner wore his practiced smile like armor. Bricks carried his wrench again, which told me he either felt safer armed or couldn't remember where else to put his hands. Wolfe did not introduce. He did not accuse. He indicated the button with a glance. "Do you recognize it?" Wolfe asked. Danner's eyes flicked to it, just a flick, and away too fast. Bricks stared at it longer than he meant to, then shifted his weight. Wolfe's voice stayed calm. "Interesting." Danner cleared his throat. "It's a button." "Yes," Wolfe said. "And people do not fear buttons. They fear what buttons undo." Silence held, tight as a stitch. Then Wolfe said, almost conversationally, "This crescent scratch was made by contact with a key. A hotel key. Therefore, this button was in the hotel. Before Owen Marr was dressed as Elias Brent before the corpse was presented, before the tape learned to forget. He let that settle. And now," Wolfe added, "we will discuss who had the keys and who had the shirt." Chapter 8. The tailor's
Nero
debt, Hank
Wolfe
Rourke
and the
finally
umbilical
talked the
cord
way a
of
man
his
with a
watch.
needle
A
talks,
jeweler shows
tight,
Wolfe a watch
careful,
that
every
only
word
runs
cinched as if it might
1922.
snag and tear.
On the back, there
We
was
had him in
key of
Wolfe's office
meanwhile,
because
like
Wolfe prefers his
the watch is
confessions in
tied to a
familiar
person.
furniture.
Then a
Rourke
gently
sat on the edge of the yellow
story
chair
of the
like it was
story.
hot.
Hope you
His
like
hands
it.
kept moving,
Comment next,
touching
and I
his
will
thumb
do
to his
part 2.
forefinger, rubbing an invisible thread. Habits you don't lose when the work gets nervous. Wolfe didn't press him with noise. Wolfe pressed him with quiet. "You have repaired Mr. Marr's clothing," Wolfe said. Rourke swallowed. "I do repairs, staff stuff, buttons, hems, nothing, criminal." Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly. "Days ago," Rourke's jaw tightened. "Yeah, days." I watched the man's fingers. They were clean, but the pads were rough, collused in the exact spots where thread pulls hardest. Wolfe said, "Tell us." Rourke exhaled as if surrendering a seam. "Owen tore a shirt," he said. "Not that fancy one, his own." He caught it on a drawer at the front desk. Jagged edge, bad wood. It ripped near the buttons. He was mad because he couldn't afford new. "And you repaired it," Wolfe said. "Yeah," Rourke muttered. "I sewed. I fixed. That's what I do." Wolfe's tone stayed mild. "And you used a particular button." Rourke blinked. "I used what matched. Owen had a spare brass. Same maker as the nice shirts. Don't ask me why." That made Kramer grunt. Rowe leaned forward. "I wrote it down." Wolfe continued. "Last night, someone asked you for the same button." Rourke's eyes darted. "Who told you that?" "Nobody," Wolfe said. "I told me." Rourke licked his lips. "Yeah," he admitted, voice low. "Summoning came down. Late in a rush, wanted that exact button. Same stamp, same size. Said it was urgent, paid double." "Paid double," I echoed. "For a button." Rourke nodded miserably. "For the trouble. For the hour." Wolfe's eyes were steady. "You did not refuse." Rourke's mouth tightened. "I got bills," Wolfe said softly. "Debt is a fine leash." Rourke flinched. Kramer snapped. "Name." Rourke shook his head fast. "I know." Wolfe didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He reached into his desk drawer and brought out the crescent scratch brass button we'd found in Owen Marr's uniform pocket. He set it on the blotter between them. Rourke stared at it. His face changed in stages. Recognition first, then fear, then the dull look of a man realizing the wall behind him has no door, Wolfe said. "This was in Owen Marr's pocket. It bears a crescent scratch from contact with a key. You have handled this sort of button. You know who requested it." Rourke's shoulders sagged. His hands stopped moving. He whispered, "Maintenance." Brix's name hung in the air before it was spoken, like a bad smell that arrives ahead of the source. Rourke lifted his eyes to Wolfe. "Nate Brix," he said, voice breaking. He said it was for a uniform emergency. Wolfe's gaze stayed calm, almost bored. "Of course he did." Rowe's jaw tightened. Kramer's face went hard with satisfaction. The look of a man who can finally point his anger somewhere. I watched Wolfe instead. Wolfe wasn't satisfied yet. He looked as if someone had merely handed him one piece of a larger machine. "Mr. Rourke," Wolfe said, "did Mr. Brix also ask for thread?" Rourke
Yeah,
swallowed.
Wolf in
"Copper,
the middle of the
brown,"
court
he
of
admitted.
wristwatch.
"Same
A
me
hero
night.
shows full
Same
watch
rush.
that only runs
Like
when
he was
someone
sewing in
touches
the
it.
dark." Wolfe
On the
nodded
back,
once.
there was a
"Thank
pale
you."
thin wire, like
Rourke
the
blinked.
watch is
"That's
tied
it."
to a person.
Wolfe's
Then
eyes
Joe
narrowed.
blinked. Let's figure it
"That
out
is
for
all you
sure.
can give without drowning
Looked like
yourself.
it
Now
might come up
go,
next,
and
as if
consider
a
that your
part.
debt would have been lighter than a murder charge." Rourke stumbled out pale, breathing as if he'd been stitched too tight himself. Kramer stood. "I'm going to haul Brix in." Wolfe's voice stopped him. Number Kramer froze, glaring. "What do you mean, no?" Wolfe's tone was flat. "Nate Brix is a tool, Inspector. Tools do not design, they are used." Rowe frowned. "You think he acted for someone?" Wolfe leaned back, fingers steepled. "A maintenance man may erase footage. He may move a body. He may sew poorly in haste. But he does not invent a corpse dressed as another man to manufacture a false death." I felt the itch return. "So Brix is your hands," I said. "Who's the mind?" Wolfe's eyes were cold. "We have been circling it since the beginning, Archie. A consulting firm that arranges people, a ghost room paid in cash, a missing man named Elias Brent, and a corpse that was made to look like him." He paused, then added softly, "Now we will find where Mr. Brent is being kept, and who is profiting from his absence." Chapter 9. The reason, the access, the knowledge, the maintenance cage in the Galloway's basement wasn't a room so much as a confession that hadn't been spoken yet. Chain, link walls, padlocks, shelves of parts that looked harmless until you realized every one of them could be used to make something stop working. Clark Danner did not want us there. He unlocked the cage anyway because Wolfe had a tone that made men with keys remember they were temporary. Inside, Nate Brix's world sat in greasy order, bins of valves, lengths of wire, a toolbox that had seen more honest labor than its owner deserved, and a narrow workbench with a lamp angled down like an interrogator. Wolfe stood outside the chain, link opening, and looked in without stepping, as if the air itself might be contaminated by excuses. "Archie," he said. I went in. On the bench was a needle kit, cheap plastic, beside a spool of thread, copper, brown next to it, a small envelope of spare buttons, plain brass. Same maker's stamp as the Madison shirt buttons, and under the kit, half, hidden beneath a rag, was a hotel key, not a guest card, not a staff card, but the thick, old-fashioned master that hotels swear they do not have anymore. I held it up. "This," I said, "wasn't supposed to exist." Danner's smile attempted a comeback and died in midair. "That's for emergencies." Wolfe's voice was mild. "Murder is often called an emergency after it occurs." Brix brought down by Rowe and held at the doorway like a bad smell you can't quite locate. Stared at the key as if it had betrayed him. Grease under his nails, wrench missing from his hand this time. He looked smaller, without the prop. Wolfe didn't glare at him. Wolfe did something worse. He made him irrelevant. "Access," Wolfe said, almost pleasantly. "Rooms, cameras, laundry. A man with such access can erase footsteps and press lies flat." Rowe stepped forward. "We're logging this," he said, and his voice had the sharp edge of a man who finally sees the outline of a charge. I moved to a clipboard hanging on the inside of the cage door. Maintenance logs, boiler checks, supply requests. Most of it was dull as oatmeal. Then I saw a ledger tucked behind it, the kind of notebook men keep when they don't trust official paper. I flipped it open. The entries were simple: dates, parts ordered, parts installed, and next to them, amounts that didn't line up, Too high, too frequent, too neat. Skimming, the way a man skims cream off milk and tells himself the milk will never notice. I looked at Rowe. This is your motive. Bricks's jaw tightened. That's not. Wolfe's voice cut through him. Owen Marr knew keys better than people, Wolfe said. Yet he knew enough people to notice when money disappeared. He noticed you, Mr. Bricks. Bricks's eyes flickered. Fear, then anger. He was a rat, he snapped. He was going to tell Dana. He said he had proof. Wolfe nodded once as if Bricks had just confirmed an obvious measurement. So you killed him. Bricks shook his head too fast. I hit him. I didn't. He fell. Save it, Rowe said, stepping closer. Wolfe raised a hand, quieting Rowe like a man quieting a dog. Mr. Bricks, Wolfe said, you may have struck him. You may even have intended to kill him. But the staging, that is the point. Bricks stared. What staging? Wolfe's eyes narrowed. The wrong button, a copper, brown thread, the swapped shirt. Bricks's mouth opened, then closed. Wolfe continued, voice steady. You did not dress him because you are tidy. You dressed him because you had to. The collar of his original shirt was torn, soaked with blood from the blow. You removed it to conceal the evidence. Then you swapped in Elias Brent's shirt to create a story. Rowe's face tightened. Brent's shirt, meaning Brent is not dead, Wolfe said calmly, merely useful. Bricks's eyes darted to Dana. Dana's face went pale. Wolfe watched that dart with the patience of a man watching a fish break the surface. You stitched the lie back together, Wolfe said softly. Too fast. And you chose copper, brown thread because it was what you had, not what you needed. Bricks's shoulders sagged. I had to, he muttered. I had to make it look like he was somebody else. Who told you to? I asked. Bricks's head snapped toward me, then away. Wolfe's voice was quiet, inexorable. A maintenance man does not invent a corpse dressed as another man to manufacture a false death. He executes, he obeys, he borrows narrative. Bricks swallowed hard. The chain-link cage seemed to tighten around him without moving. Who gave you the shirt? Wolfe asked. Bricks's lips trembled once, then pressed tight. Rowe stepped in. Talk. Bricks's eyes flicked again, toward the elevator corridor, toward the service entrance, toward the invisible routes people use when they think they're unseen. And in that flick, Wolfe found what he wanted. The reason, Wolfe said, almost gently, is money. The access is keys. The knowledge is the hotel's second skin. Now, Mr. Bricks, tell us who wears it. Chapter 10. The missing button. Found Wolfe laid it out like a street sermon. You didn't just kill him, Nate. You fixed him. The wrong button is your signature. Your hands don't rush. Your hands finish. Bricks tried to laugh, but it came out cracked. He'd forgotten the smallest rule: perfection is suspicious. When Wolfe produced the crescent scratch button, Bricks's eyes fell, like a man watching his own alibi fall off a shirt front. The city went back to being dirty, but the case stayed clean, because one tiny detail refused to cooperate. The last act of a Nero Wolfe case is never performed in a basement, no matter how many locks confess down there. Wolfe requires upholstery, good light, and an audience truth. In his view, deserves a proper chair. So we brought Nate Bricks up from the Galloway's underbelly and into Wolfe's office on West 35th, where the air is controlled. The chairs are honest, and the only hum comes from the city outside, pretending it doesn't care. Inspector Kramer came, of course, dragging his impatience like a coat that didn't fit. Lieutenant Rowe arrived with his neat resentment. Clerk Dana showed up with his practiced smile fraying at the edges. Hank Rourke sat like a man, regretting every bill he'd ever had. Lydia Tarrant looked insulted to be included among criminals. Martin Klein was there, too. Summoned by Kramer, pale and sharp-eyed. Edwin Halstead sent a lawyer, then arrived anyway. Because men like Halstead cannot tolerate mysteries they don't control. and somewhere in the back, Marla Voss hovered, small and shaken, as if the room's gravity might swallow her. Wolfe waited until Fritz had served coffee and retreated, because Wolfe believes murder is best discussed after the cups are properly placed. Then Wolfe began. He did not pace. He did not gesture wildly. He sat, immense behind his desk, and looked at them the way a judge looks at a jury he already knows is wrong. The victim found at Halstead and Klein, Wolfe said, was not Elias Brent. A murmur went around the room. Halstead's lawyer began to speak, and Wolfe lifted a hand. It was Owen Marr, Wolfe continued. Night clerk at the Galloway Hotel. A quiet man, a man with keys, a man who noticed when money disappeared. Dana's smile twitched. Bricks stared at the floor. Wolfe's eyes moved to Bricks, and when Wolfe fixes on you, it feels like the room has narrowed. Mr. Bricks, Wolfe said, you did not merely kill Owen Marr. You fixed him. Bricks gave a rough laugh that had no humor in it. Fixed him? What is this? Wolfe's voice stayed calm. You struck him in the hotel, in a place where you were comfortable, the basement, the boiler room, perhaps, where your work gives you privacy, and your noise gives you cover. The blow tore his collar and left it soaked with blood. That collar would have betrayed you. Therefore, you removed the shirt. Bricks's jaw clenched. His eyes flicked, once, to Dana, then back down. Wolfe continued, as if reading from a ledger nobody else could see. You had access to laundry, to supplies, to cameras, to keys. You had the means to clean, to move, to erase, but you did not have the mind to invent what came next. Someone supplied you with a narrative. Klein shifted sharply. Halstead's lawyer opened his mouth again. Wolfe ignored both. You dressed Owen Marr in a shirt belonging to Elias Brent, Wolfe said. A man connected to Halstead and Klein. You then transported the body through the service routes. You knew service elevator, loading dock, and placed it in the firm's private reception room, arranged, clean, presentable. They found a showroom corpse because someone wished to exhibit a lie. Kramer's face reddened, but he held because he was listening, Wolfe said. And then, because you are meticulous in a stupid way, you repaired the shirt. I didn't. You did, Wolfe said, and there was steel in it now. You replaced a missing button with one that was almost right, using thread that was not. You used copper, brown thread because it was available in your maintenance cage. You used a button supplied by Mr. Rourke because you were in haste, and you made it neat, because your hands do not rush, your hands finish. That hit Bricks harder than an accusation of murder. Murder is crude. Meticulousness is personal. Bricks tried to laugh again. It came out cracked. You're talking about a button. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Yes, because perfection is suspicious. A man who dies violently does not die neatly. You made him neat to make him believable, and in doing so, you made him impossible. Wolfe reached into his desk drawer and produced the small brass button with the crescent scratch. He placed it on the blotter with the slow care of a priest setting down a relic. This, Wolfe said, was found in Owen Marr's uniform jacket. Bricks stared at it. His eyes fell, as if something inside him had unhooked. A replacement button, Wolfe said. Kept after a repair, scratched by contact with a hotel key, because Owen Marr handled keys the way you handle wrenches. That button ties him to the repair, and the repair ties him to Mr. Rourke's drawer. And Mr. Rourke's drawer ties him to you, because you came in the night, in a rush, and paid double for the exact match. Rourke flinched. Dana's smile finally collapsed, leaving his face bare and frightened. Wolfe turned his gaze on Dana. And you, Mr. Dana, provided the opportunity. You provided the nameless room paid in cash. You provided the administrative code that made the tape learn to forget. Dana's voice came out thin. I didn't kill anyone. No, Wolfe agreed. You merely cooperated. You sold discretion until it purchased you a corpse. That is not murder. It is cowardice. Dana's face went grey. Wolfe returned his attention to Bricks. The motive, as discovered in your own ledger, was money. You skimmed repair funds and sold parts. Owen Marr discovered it. He threatened to speak. You struck him. Brix's hands curled. He was going to ruin me. Wolfe's tone was cold. He was going to stop you. Rowe stepped forward. Where is Elias Brent? Silence. Wolfe did not raise his voice. He simply waited. That is his finest weapon. Time turned against you. Brix swallowed hard. His eyes flicked. Again, to Halstead. Wolfe saw it and finished the sentence for him. Mr. Brent is alive, Wolfe said, and he is being held because someone profits from his absence. The false corpse was meant to convince the world that Elias Brent was dead, thus silencing him, releasing someone from obligation, or securing control of whatever he threatened to expose. Halstead's lawyer sputtered. Halstead's face tightened, and for the first time his composure looked like what it was, a mask. Kramer's voice was a growl. Halstead, you want to explain that? Halstead said, this is absurd. Wolfe's eyes pinned him. Absurd is thinking you can arrange reality and not leave a seam. Your firm arranges people. You arranged a disappearance. Mr. Brent discovered it and threatened exposure. You needed him gone, but you needed time to secure documents, accounts, influence. Therefore you needed him dead in public while alive in private. Klein's face went white. You, he choked, then swallowed. You told me he'd gone away. Halstead's eyes flashed. Be quiet. Wolfe's voice was mild again, which made it worse. Mr. Klein, your bitterness made you observant, but your cowardice made you complicit. Klein sagged as if the words had weight. Wolfe looked back to Brix. You were hired because you had access. You were instructed because you had hands, but you left your signature because you could not resist finishing. Brix's mouth opened. No sound came out at first. Then, horse, he said. I didn't plan it. No, Wolfe said. You executed it. Rowe's voice was sharp. Where is Brent? Brix shut his eyes briefly, like a man bracing for impact. Then he spoke, cracked and defeated. 17:02, he whispered. The ghost room. He's in the connecting storage. Behind the linen closet wall, Dana had the key. Dana made a sound that might have been a protest or a sob. Kramer lunged for the phone on Wolfe's desk. Stebbins, he barked. Get a squad to the Galloway, room 1702. Now. Wolfe did not look pleased. He looked satisfied in the particular way that means the logic has closed like a well-made lock. As the police surged out, the room emptied of its heat. Halstead stood rigid, his lawyer hissing at him. Klein looked like a man seeing his own future in a mirror he hated. Rourke stared at his hands as if deciding whether to cut them off. Lydia Tarrant's expression had shifted from insult to grim vindication, housekeeping love's order, even injustice. When the last of them had gone, I poured Wolfe a fresh cup of coffee. Outside, the city went back to being dirty. It always does. Dirt is New York's natural state, but the case stayed clean, because one tiny detail refused to cooperate. Wolfe picked up his cup. Archie, he said, remember this. Buttons, I asked. He gave me a look. Number vanity. A man who believes he can perfect a lie will inevitably make it too perfect. I leaned back at my desk, listened to the far-off sirens turning toward the Galloway, and thought about how a missing button can bring down a whole well-pressed scheme. Then Wolfe added, as if it were an afterthought, and therefore more dangerous, and Archie, tell Fritz that dinner must not be delayed. Murder is no excuse for overcooking. I grinned. Yes, sir. And in the brownstone on West 35th, with the orchids upstairs and the city chewing evidence outside, Nero Wolfe had done what he always does. He had made time talk.